What was your I shouldn't have said that moment when talking to a customer? In high school I worked as a dry cleaner. Woman comes in. Her dad died. Wants me to iron the suit he would be buried in. I ask her what kind of starch she would like. She asks what I recommend. Capital I, in all of my infinite wisdom, said well I'm assuming he won't be moving around much so a light starch is fine, and then immediately apologized and mentally died inside. When I was 16 I worked at an amusement park in California. This family was waiting at the front of the line to go on my roller coaster. The dad just said hi. We're from Wyoming. Without thinking I sarcastically said wow. My favorite place. After the standard customer rich fest, ending with and I am never shopping here again, I gave her a smile and said, thank you. We sure would appreciate that. She stood there with her mouth open while I moved on to the next customer. Served a customer a salad and was called back almost immediately to the table. There was a cockroach in the salad. It was gross. I stupidly said, you didn't order that, did you? I used to work at Jimmy John's. When we made a drive-thru order, the person who wraps the sandwich would bag it and toss it across the restaurant to the drive-thru person to hand it out after they took the payment. I was the drive-thru person and dropped the wrapped and bagged sandwich. Without thinking, I just picked it up and handed it to the customer. He goes, you're seriously going to serve me that? My instant reaction was to ask, oh, you saw that? He was not amused. A customer tried to exchange cash with me and I told her no and explained that we can't as a policy to protect against fast change artists. She really suspiciously, in an exasperated voice, was like, but I'm obviously not a fast change artist. And without thinking that sounds like something a fast change artist would say. A customer came up to me asking about the shoes that were on sale for $29.99. I walked over to the fixture and showed him the sign said the jeans were on sale, not the shoes. I then said sometimes you have to read the whole sign. My coworker had to turn around and walk off so he wouldn't hear her line. I am really surprised I didn't get talked to about that. I was on a call with a customer who was complaining and absolutely irate. I had only been on the job for a few weeks and was becoming flustered. There was literally nothing I could do to calm this person down or get him to accept my answers. I was finally about to get him off the line when he made a sarcastic comment to the extent of, wow, thanks. You've been such a great help. In my rush to say no problem or you're welcome, I ended up saying your problem and hanging up. He called several times after that and I just ignored the calls because I was so exhausted. While working in a deli, a customer asked to try the Polish ham. She said she didn't care for it and would take some Black Forest ham. Once again the Germans triumph over the Polish. Turns out she was Polish. Oops. I used to work in the hand call center and this woman's package didn't arrive on the day our website said it would. Bearing in mind this was an order for hand basic items which came to about $50. She said that because she had to take a day off work we now owed her lost wages which amounted to $850. I said to her, you took a day off work where you would have earned $850 to wait at home for a package that is worth $50. Do you seriously expect me to believe that? Long story short, she hung up when I saw through the obvious bullet. I answered a customer call when I worked at a movie theater and it was a couple asking me for directions to the theater from wherever they were. They were driving and getting frustrated with me, and I was kind of getting frustrated with them for being mad at me when I assumed they were talking to me on a smartphone. So at some point I said something like, most people would just use the internet. They did not like that. This is my time to shine. Was 17. Working at a Meijer. Slightly older gentleman comes up with a basket on his arm. Starts unloading groceries. Nothing too unusual, except as I'm packing the bags on the carousel, he's struggling to keep up reloading his little basket. He didn't seem old enough to really be struggling, but I figured maybe something was wrong and so I innocently asked, do you need a hand? Guy shoots me a look and stares full eye contact at me for like a minute. I'm confused, thinking maybe he misheard me, maybe a little cognitively impaired, and open my mouth to repeat myself. He smiles, pulls down the sleeve of his shirt, and reveals he in fact has a prosthetic hand. I never understood the phrase melt into the ground until that moment. I was almost in tears, I was so embarrassed. But fortunately the guy recognized I wasn't being a glibbershat. I was just trying to help him, and was kind enough to let me off the hook. I was telling clients their dog was dying and they handed me their phone to tell their daughter, on the line. Official owner of the dog, what was happening. I took the phone, introduced myself, then promptly said, how are you? I sold housewares at Masses. When you purchased something I'd be like, now go and bake a cake. When they bought a mixer, or bet you can't wait to get those wrinkles out. When their purchase was an iron. One night a middle-aged older man bought a meat pounder. I rung him up and said, now go home and beat your meat. Oops. Hey, are you doing drugs in the restroom? And then he pulled a knife on me. I was working at a client site and just pissed at them. The problem was that my company ducked up. Our inspector was an idiot who did nothing, and I was set up to fail. So I am in a meeting and they are demanding all this free stuff. And I blurt out, we're a business, not a charity. They loved it, and the head Texan was all like, hey big boy, you've grown some big balls. Weird thing is they really helped me find a new job. I was very pregnant, about 6.5 months pregnant with twins, working at a call center, and I got a cold transfer from customer relations from a super rude customer. I greet him nicely and he interrupts me and asks, can you see all my information and what I need, or do I need to repeat it all over again? Starts yelling and rants for about 3 minutes, and being the sensitive ball I was, I told him, sir, this is the first time I've talked to you. You just got transferred and need time to read the notes, but it's very unfair that you're treating me like this. I was being super polite and you're yelling at me for no reason. Now it was my rant for about 2 minutes. I will place you on hold and I'll read the notes. Okay? When I put him on hold, I was convinced that if my superior was listening I was going to be in trouble, cause in CS they want you to let people walk over you, and this customer was going to complain about me. But surprisingly, when I came back from hold he sounded ashamed. He apologized to me and admitted he had been a D to me for no reason and that he wanted to start all over, and the rest of the call was super smooth, but I was very scared while on hold. Coffee shop. Woman orders a latte and I ask if she wants full fat or skimmed milk. She asks, you don't have a semi, do you? I reply, no. It's just the way I'm standing. She did not look amused. Fine. Call the manager in the morning. I don't give her it. Seriously, she told him the same thing I did. But you're supposed to pretend you give her it. And I swore. I shouldn't have done that actually. I was rinsing beer glasses behind the bar with one of those giant, high pressure sprayers that kind of looked like a small shower. A guy was mad that we wouldn't return his girlfriend's obviously fake ID. He looked like he was about to come across the bar. Without thinking, I turned, still holding the sprayer, and hit him full on in the face. He left. I didn't get fired. I used to work for Tsar. Now working day after day taking crap from passengers. You get a little immune from speaking your mind, but today was not one of those days. It's 6 AM in the southwest terminal, so it's peak rush hour and every lane is open and packed. I am working the divestiture position. So basically I'm standing behind the table in front of the machine to make sure you had everything just right and answer questions. Keep in mind, what you are asked to do won't always make sense. Even the officers have occasional WTF moments when we get a rule change. Some come from headquarters, some are local management made up things, and some come from airport stakeholders. The company providing the security bins sold advertising to pay for the cost of new replacement bins every 6 weeks or so. As such, they did not want people putting their shoes in the bins and getting them muddy or wet. So being a good officer, I had to tell people not to put shoes in the bin and take them out. Next in line is a group of your usual early 30 feet something business bros dressed up casual. Cool. The first guy put his shoes in a bin with his coat and ignored the usual spiel leading to this interaction. Me. I'm sorry. No shoes in the bin. I'll need to put them on the belt. Bro, those shoes are $200 designer shoes. You can't expect me to take them out. These shoes were some beat up Adidas with dirt all over them and quarter size holes in the toe box. Me. Turning to the guy, these shoes are torn up. They cannot be worth that much. and in a smooth motion I take them out of the bin and toss them on the belt. Bro, did you really just do that? Don't you know who I am? Exclamation point. Me. I look him up and down and say, sir, you are flying southwest. You can't be that important. The fellow boss just started dying of laughter and have to hold themselves up with the tables. Head bro turns beet red and scurries off to the scanner. Realizing what I have said, scurry back to the podium and tell the manager that I said something stupid. He may have an angry passenger headed his way. And I was going to hang out on a different lane till the guy passed by. I never got in trouble and the passenger never complained. But that was by far the best on the job burn I have delivered. Edit. Formatting. I worked at a hotel as a front desk. This group of family comes in to check in and I hand them their room keys. I see the father go out the door but I didn't see the rest of the family take a left our seating area lobby. Well, the father just swings open the door and doesn't close it. I let out a sigh and say I hate lazy ass people that don't close the door to my coworker. I see in the corner of my left eye the rest of the family giving me the death stare. I received a complaint the next morning. Was making casual conversation with a customer after a meeting and they had mentioned how disappointed they were in our QC at the time. I quickly remembered a funny story about our previous quality guy not knowing how to read drawings or what the difference was between circumference and diameter. That didn't help their impression of us. Edit. Disappointed. Not disappointing. I have two. Once I was a cashier at a supermarket and the customer was involved with the church and asked, do you have any kind of preacher discount? And I said nah. We're all pretty godless here at Super One, the name of the grocery store. His wife thought it was pretty funny but he didn't. Second one was at a large retail store. We sold fish there in the pet department. One of the tanks was empty and a customer wanted whichever fish was supposed to go in there. She said, you're out of those? You don't have any in the back? And I said we used to keep them in the back room but they surprisingly died within minutes. She didn't think it was funny. But for real. What a stupid question. A lot of customers have zero idea of what the back actually is. Them, it was great meeting you. Me. Before immediately walking away, thanks. In this case, I was the customer. I had run by my roommate's work to drop off something to her and buy something. Since both her and her manager were working the cash registers, I asked who's checking me out. Without blinking her manager goes, I've been checking you out all night. I left and he turned to my roommate. Did I say what I think I did? Turns out he was high on pain meds. But I still got a great story out of it. I'm working in a library. And a couple, they're like 50 years old, comes in. You know the type. They're teasing each other. He says something to me like, well, we're only here for her. Cause I can't even read. With a big grin. So, you know. I thought he was joking. Found out after making my own joke to him later that, nope, he wasn't. He was actually illiterate and I had made fun of him for it. One time this customer stood in the wrong line for like 10 until he got in the correct line where he had to wait another 15 minutes. When he got to me he was pretty annoyed and, for some reason, I decided to joking tell the guy that he had to back to the other line for what he needed. He didn't laugh. At a bookstore, I had a customer complain because after asking me where about a dozen fiction authors were, all our fiction was in one place. I pointed out that if he knew the last name all he had to do was know the alphabet and it was okay to sing it if he needed to. My manager took the complaint the next morning and reminded it was probably best I kept my snark to a slightly more inside voice. It also took me about 10 minutes to get him sorted on fiction vs non-fiction. On call with a member who just had all his accounts frozen. No notes on why or what happened. The department that would have the answer left for the day already. This dude was understandably pissed. Nothing I could do. Nothing management could do. After the exchange and giving the member the number to that department and their hours, I told him have a great day without thinking. He responded with a pissed off sarcastic laugh and hung up. Worked at a bakery years ago. We had bagged up mince pies on the counter for Christmas. Customer asks me, what do you do with these? And my instant response was, you eat them, sir. He found it hilarious, thank goodness. He then clarified, wanting to know how to serve them, hot or cold. My dad still brings it up. serving a table of 4 black ladies who had become impatient waiting for their lunch order. I replied, I'll get back there and crack the whip. So dumb. A woman's kids were trashing an end cap. I asked them to stop and she was angry. I talked to them and told me it was my job to clean it up. The kids were fine. My response didn't go over well. Oh my word. Your kids are so annoying. That's not an accident I have to clean up. That's intentional damage and you're encouraging it. Got written up for that mouthing off. I worked at a retail pharmacy and late one night a woman pulled up to the drive-through window talking on her cell phone. She handed me the prescription. I tell her it will be ready in about 10 minutes. She said she was told over the phone we could have it ready right away. This is ridiculous. The whole thing. I say, Mom, you need to change your tune. Because it is awful. She was shocked and asked for the prescription back. And I gladly handed it over. As I closed the drive-through window she said, It's the only time in my life I've been called a rick. Because I'm super ducking nice. I think she was talking to herself. I expected a call from the regional manager but never got one. This wasn't exactly to the customer. But I was working at a bookstore at the mall. It was toward the end of the night and there were barely any customers. So my coworker and I were mostly slacking off. This guy came in and wanted to return something. But he didn't have a receipt. And started arguing with my coworker about it. We needed a receipt to process a return. The original receipt had to be initialed and turned into corporate. So we couldn't process his return without it. He was a real D about it. But after several minutes of arguing he finally seemed to accept that we weren't processing his return and walked off. Jesus, said I, believing he had left the store. That guy was a real ducking douchebag. Just as the guy in question returned to the register to make an actual purchase. I was making a sandwich for a lady and a regular customer came in. I'll call him D. Usually by day he paints and is pretty normal. But at night, he's my favorite drunk who comes in. He's fun and hilarious. So he comes in and I wave and say hi. The girl smiles and excitedly says, you know him? And I said something along the lines of he's a fun drunk. The girl tells me he's her brother. Even though she said it nicely, it still seemed like she was bothered by it. I realized what I said and tried saying things like he's one of my favorite people that come in here because I didn't want her to think I was judging him. I wasn't. I used to work tech support over the phone for CenturyLink. One day, I get a call at about 5 PM Friday from a woman who is freaking out because she's going to have her kids over and they don't have internet. Okay. I walk her through the troubleshooting and it turns out she's gonna need a technician. They don't do weekend stuff. So she's solved for the weekend. Cue a freak out. What am I going to do with my kids? I have my kids this weekend. They need XBOX and cable. OMG. And on. So I accidentally blurted out, have you tried paying attention to them? The line went dead silent. And then she hung up. Oops. Walked up behind them. Looked like a woman. Referred to them as Miss. They turned around and all I could see was their heavy stubble. I live in the PNW. So you see this kind of a lot. But it was still super weird. I'm a bartender. One day this couple came up and the dude ordered a beer and I asked his wife if she wanted a drink as well. And she responded, I can't drink. Reflexively I said not with that attitude, which was not entirely appropriate given that she was pregnant. I'm a dude. And had somewhat long hair in high school. I was working at the local supermarket and this older woman, 50s or 60s, asked if I was wearing a wig. I responded by saying no. And replied with the same question. After which she gave me an appalled look like I had called her a cunt or something.